Okay, everybody, welcome back to EveRide DRZ 400 Extreme Makeover. We're now going to start working on the forks, and what we're going to do is we're going to disassemble the entire fork assembly all the way down to the valving, and we're going to revalve the front forks and also replace fluid, change the fork seals, inspect the bushings, see if they need to be replaced or not. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take the triple clamp bolts up here and up here and loosen those. There's two bolts down here that clamp the axle in place on both sides with the nut on the axle that will pull off, pull the front wheel out. We will take the front brake caliper off, and also over here he's got little straps here that hold his Baja Designs headlight kit on. That's going to come off. And then what we're going to do, before you slide it all out, you want to loosen this top cap, because these work as a really good clamp to be able to hold the fork, so you can get a wrench or a socket on there to loosen that top cap that's going to come off. Now, while we're talking about this, we're going to spend just a few minutes about education on how front forks work and how you tune them for your bike. This particular style of fork has two adjusters. There's one on the very top here in the center of this top cap. We'll show you when we have the forks off. And then there's one down here on the bottom underneath. And some bikes have the compression adjuster on the bottom with the rebound adjuster on the top. And if it's a closed cartridge style fork, which you'd see on more of the motocross bikes, it's the opposite. The rebound is at the bottom and the compression is at the top. So we talked about the rear shock and how it works on trails and adventure riding, and with the front forks it's very similar in a lot of ways, but first you have to set the attitude of the bike right with sag, which we talked about before with the shock in the rear. And once you have that set up, there's certain attributes about how the front forks work that will lead you to know whether you need to increase or decrease compression or increase or decrease rebound. In my opinion, when it's tuning, it's always easier to start with the rebound, which on this bike will be at the top. And what you want to do is you want to find a section of whoops that with your normal gear on that you ride with, you want the bike to be warm, you want the suspension to be warm. So go out and ride it, pretty hard for maybe 20-30 minutes, and then kind of find a whoop section that is pretty challenging, and then get some speed and then hit those whoop sections and go across. And what will end up happening is what you want to try to do, remember, rebound is where the forks open. You want those forks to open as quickly as they can without being springy, okay? So as you're going across, you can have someone look at you and watch, and if you're hitting bump, 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 and the forks don't extend all the way and the tires stay in contact with the ground, so you see a space after you hit the bump and then there's a space and then it comes down, that means your rebound is not opening fast enough. So on this top adjuster right here, you would go counterclockwise a click or two, maybe three, to open it up a little bit faster. Now if you find that it's really springy, it feels really springy to you and not planted, in other words, another way to do this on rebound is to hit a jump and land on a flat surface. So if you have a jump that goes up and it's flat at the top, hit the jump and land. And if your front end goes kaboing like that, your rebound is too loose. It should kind of go down and stick. So you can either go clockwise to slow the rebound down or counterclockwise to speed it up. Go on a whoop section first, see if there's air underneath your tire as you hit the whoops. If there is, speed it up. And then go find a jump with a flat top and hit the top of that jump and land. And if you feel a kaboing, boing, boing, then you know that you have too fast a rebound, and you turn a click in, maybe another click in, test it again until your front end just sticks when you land. Once you have that done, you pretty much just leave it, and then you start working on compression. And if your compression, what you want to do is find an area that maybe has a berm, okay, a pretty tight berm, and especially one that's kind of ruddy is a good way to test it. And go around that berm, and if your suspension is too soft, the front end is going to do what they call knifing, which is where the front end dives in. It turns really good, but it dives in, and you find yourself kind of falling into the turn as if you're going to fall down inside the turn. If the suspension on compression is too stiff, the front end is not going to come down and it wants to stay up, and you'll find yourself drifting off to the outside of the berm, wanting to go off the top of it. So what you do is if you're going off the top of the berm and it's hard to keep a line, you're just kind of drifting wide all the time, then what you want to do is soften the compression a little bit so that the front end goes down and it will tend to stay in the line better. And if your front end just keeps diving, you find yourself trying to fall in and it's hard to keep the bike up comfortable, then stiffen the compression a little bit. The other thing is, if you're just paying attention to it, you'll see if the front end dives when you go in to the berm. And if it's diving all the time and you're going through a lot of suspension travel, especially if there's a lot of bumps in there and you're hitting those bumps and it's getting choppy and hard, then you know you need to stiffen the compression so you don't go through all the stroke. There's same kind of thing occurs on the forks as it does with the shock with high and low speed compression. There's not separate adjusters for it on any fork on the market except for some very specialized ones. So you have to change that with the valving. So same thing applies. If you hit a fast sharp edge bump, or what classic is braking bumps, you're going in to some obstacle and there's all these little bumps, you're hitting the brakes, and if the high speed compression is too stiff, then it's really hard and chattery and you'll drift off and won't be able to stay on the line. So you can soften that up a little bit with changing the valving so that your front end stays kind of planted and those sharp edge bumps you don't really even feel them. Same thing occurs on hitting the face of a jump. If you're hitting the face of a jump and your front end squishes down and you tend to feel like you're losing control a little bit, your low speed compression is probably not enough. It's probably too soft. Same thing going around a berm. That's low speed compression, and if you find yourself diving in and you're adjusting the clickers up and it's still doing it or it's getting more and more harsh, you might want to consider changing the valving. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take these forks off of the bike now with that understanding, and then we are going to modify the valving and take them apart, and we'll show a video on how we're going to do that. So so far we're progressing right along with this bike and slowly making some progress with it, so stay tuned for the next video.